welcome to School Mental Health Ontario and ThriveSMH's video podcast. This is episode 3 in the series where we're discussing mental health and mental illness and how they're represented in social media. In today's episode, we will be discussing how mental illness is shown in social media. But first, let's introduce ourselves. I am Kirin. My pronouns are she, her. I am in my first year of university and I live in Brampton.
Hi everyone, my name is Mady. My pronouns are she, her. I'm in grade 10 and I live in Manitoulin Island.
Hi everyone, my name is Shwedhaa. My pronouns are she, her. I just started grade 10 and I'm from Scarborough.
Hi everyone, my name is Huda. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the newcomer student mental health consultant here at School Mental Health Ontario, and I'm from Durham region.
Okay, let's start with an icebreaker. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? Personally, I think I would like to go to Hawaii and go surfing.
For a few years now, I've been wanting to visit Japan. They have so many beautiful landscapes and delicious food I would love to eat. And they have a lot of stores that revolve around my interests, like my love for collecting trinkets and J fashion.
You guys are giving very nice and sophisticated answers. If I could personally answer it, I would like to go underground with the worms, with the groundhogs. I just want to see what the living situation is, how my worm buddy's doing. I also heard that if half a worm falls off, the other worm grows back. I want to see if that's true as well. Just anywhere as long as it's underground, in the dark, in the dirt, no humans.
I was not expecting the underground, so I love that. For me, it would definitely be Maldives. That's I've always wanted to go there. I love water. I'm a big water girl, so that is my plan. Hopefully one day.
So in the last episode, if you haven't watched it already, go watch it. But we talked about mental health misinformation on social media. To remind everyone, misinformation refers to false or misleading information. Misinformation also includes things like disinformation or misleading or ambiguous information. Disinformation is false information that is spread intentionally to deceive or mislead others. However, misleading or ambiguous information involves sharing information without the full context. For example, if people are sharing personal experiences as fact rather than acknowledging individual differences.
Building on to that, as a reminder of just how much misinformation is shared, there was a study done in the US where medical professionals reviewed 500 TikTok videos that were tagged with hashtag mental health advice or hashtag mental health tips. Of these videos, 31% of them shared information that was not scientifically accurate, and 14% shared information that was potentially damaging, like suggesting the audience take a specific medication. This is a newer area of research, so we're still learning about just how many videos share misinformation. But it seems like there is a lot out there.
This is important to remember because the information, including the misinformation, that people are gathering on TikTok is having a really large impact on how people talk and see mental illness online. What are some of the things you're noticing in how mental illness is shown in social media?
What I've noticed on social media is a lot of stigmatizing language revolving around mental illness and using mental illness as a derogatory term, misrepresenting certain mental illnesses. For example, something that I see commonly is OCD being solely represented as being a perfectionist, or an example of the derogatory use of a mental illness would be saying somebody that is doing something that might be a little silly as bipolar. I've seen examples of that, crazy or psychotic, just furthering the stigma and notion that mental illness is something quirky, a personality trait, or erasing the true barriers that come with having a mental illness. And this language that is online can also translate in real life.
Yeah, definitely adding to what Kirin said, mental illnesses being used to just everyday slang or hip words to say. Like, I like personally don't understand the appeal of it, especially when people are going through mood swings. Something I thought that was really consistent is that people always say, "Oh, I'm so bipolar. I was mad this morning and now I'm happy." But being bipolar doesn't necessarily work as it's not just mood swings, and it kind of puts down the fact that bipolar isn't actually a mental illness, but rather just like a state of mind, and like everyone has it and it's quirky, when really there are a lot of things that aren't talked about a lot on social media regarding certain disorders. And I think also how mental health and mental illness are always so stigmatized, so there's always like a negative light surrounding it. And when people like try to speak up for their like experiences, sometimes they might get shunned down because they aren't big enough or not real enough.
And for me, I also see like lots of the ignorance towards the struggles that might come with mental illnesses. I feel like on social media it doesn't always represent and show how all the different struggles that you might experience.
Those are some really great pieces. Thank you, everyone, for sharing that. For me, actually, like a really big piece, especially as a mental health practitioner, it makes me really concerned when I see certain misinformation because it's very dismissive to people who have mental health challenges. So, I'm going to share a little bit about the research. So, monetization of mental health is sensationalizing mental illness and making merchandise and accessories to make a profit. Romanticizing mental health is portraying mental health as glamorous. Normalization of symptoms associated with mental illness, where symptoms of a mental illness are considered common everyday experiences rather than a sign of distress, impairment, or illness. For example, behaviors related to obsessive compulsive disorder, which is also OCD, such as frequent hand washing or checking rituals, may be trivialized as mere quirks or personality traits rather than recognized as symptoms of a debilitating mental health condition. Mental illness is depicted as an aesthetic, as a display of a quirky personality, or accessories for their Instagram feed.
And what is the effect is this having on people?
That's a really good question. So, there is a lot of impacts, such as a lack of empathy and understanding towards those struggling with mental health challenges. People might feel invalidated or worried to seek help, fearing that their concerns will not be taken seriously. So, videos could lead to the pathologization of normal experiences or misattributions of other disorder symptoms. Self diagnosis, determining that they have a mental illness based on the limited information shared in the image video, can be harmful because it may lead to incorrect perceptions of one's mental health, delay access to appropriate interventions, making them feel like something is wrong when it's actually on the typical end of functioning. And lastly, lead to the adoption of labels that don't accurately represent their experience or symptoms.
So, say if a young person was starting to think that they had a mental illness because of what they were seeing on social media, what should they do?
So, some ideas that students can do if they feel like they may have a mental illness, especially based off what you're seeing on social media, is I would really encourage you to see a mental health professional for a consultation. So, they may refer you for an assessment or further support if needed. It's also important to learn from credible sources such as Kids Help Phone, and we'll also list a few resources for yourself and your needs. Find a circle of supportive people who can help advocate for you. So make sure to head back to episode 1 for some strategies to seek help. The link's in the description below.
What are some of the reasons a person might or might not seek help for a mental illness?
So, I know from at least my experience, I would think that people might not reach out for help because mental health is really stigmatized, especially in a lot of cultures. And if they do get like a real diagnosis, they might think certain like negative traits about themselves, like associate that with the diagnosis, and like kind of just turn this person like, oh, I have so and so, like I'm not like a normal person, like I'm not okay anymore, and it might just kind of be a reason like maybe I shouldn't get the diagnosis and confirm it. but also people might want to go and get it like confirmed, because when you do have like a clear like definition of, okay, I have this, I can find people who can help me and help me cope with this and manage ways so I can be happy with my mental illness.
I think that some people might not want to seek help for a mental illness just because of worrying about getting labeled or being put in a box that will label you. But I think overall would be a good idea to seek help.
Yeah, and to add to what you both were saying, I think some might not want to seek help for their mental illness because it's inaccessible to them. For example, it's not structured in a way that is helpful to the individual. They may not have access to transportation or a device. So those are some factors as to why they might not. Some individuals may want to seek help for a mental illness so that they can learn coping strategies and, like Shwedhaa said, like be happy while having a mental illness. It can be validating knowing what exactly might be causing what you're feeling and impacting your life in that way.
So, those are some really good reasons as to why people might not get support for their mental health. I want to include some reasons actually of why people may get some support for their mental health. So, especially in schools, if you are experiencing a mental illness, it's best to get support from a mental health practitioner. So that way you can get some extra supports at school, such as like accommodations and more time for doing your assignments. And I'm also going to share some strategies in terms of overcoming barriers for seeking care. So, like we shared in our previous episode, if you do ask an adult for support and they're not able to support you in the ways that you need, it's so important to go to trusted resources like Kids Help Phone, or also check out some of our resources in terms of trying to overcome those barriers. Another piece of advice in terms of overcoming those barriers is really like joining different school clubs that may be specific to mental health. The teacher, for example, might be aware of some other resources. Also, your guidance counselor, your school social worker as well. These are some folks who may have some support and support strategies to share with you, and also some resources in your local area to share.
Yeah, thank you so much for those like amazing points, and I really enjoyed the advice. So sometimes on social media, it seems like people are using their diagnosis as a source of credibility. Like, oh, I have this illness, therefore I am the expert. We say this not to dismiss their very real lived experience, but keeping in mind that narrative belongs to that individual, and to be mindful that it's not applicable or credible to everyone. And we know that it might not be a good source of mental health information. We shared some tips and advice for finding supportive mental health information in episode 2. What that might do is take away from the normal ups and downs of mental health that we talk about in episode 1. Like, you can no longer be experiencing poor mental health, but rather you must have a mental illness to justify taking the break to recharge. What advice do you have for young people who are going through a tough time?
So for me, I would definitely recommend talking to a trusted adult, like as your parents or a teacher or a school counselor. Consider taking a break from extracurriculars to focus on prioritizing your mental health.
I think my advice is to use what strategies work for you. You may not know which one does, but it's all about trial and error, seeing what makes you happy and brings you joy, and it does take some time to develop. So if it's not clicking immediately, that's okay. There are many different strategies out there, like meditation, indulging yourself in something you had to push off because of school or other sort of stressors, like unwinding and playing your favorite video game or reading a book. It could be some alone time or spending time with others. Whatever it looks like to you, that is okay. And there's no one way to cope.
So, the advice I have for young people who are going through a tough time is remember that you are not alone. I know when you're going through a tough time, it can feel very defeating. It could really feel like the end of the world. But how are you feeling, especially as you're going through a tough time, is temporary. Our mental health and our mental illness goes up and down. So remember, you won't always be feeling this down. And there are supports available, right? And you matter, and it's really important that you really take good care of yourself because you deserve to be and feel healthy and happy.
So, as we're wrapping up this series, what words of wisdom do you want to share with other young people in the province? So, for me, I want to say it's always important to take time and breaks for yourself.
So for me, what I really hope that folks can take away is that you are very important and you are very valuable, and you deserve to feel content and have a peace of mind. So remember that you are deserving.
My very inspirational, motivational, wise words to end the series is that it's okay to not be okay sometimes.
I think my words of wisdom are just to be mindful of the language that we use, and sometimes we may not even be aware of it and have to, check ourselves and ask ourselves if what we're saying is contributing to a stigma, and is it shaping our community in a positive way. So our words hold weight, and I think that is something important to always be aware of and reflect on. So thank you for spending your time with us. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at ThriveSMH, or sign up for School Mental Health Ontario's student email list to hear about new projects and opportunities to get involved. Thank you so much. Bye!